Welcome, everybody. It's Wednesday, May 24th, to another exciting edition of Live with Lussetto. I'm Jason Schultz, your gracious and humble and beautiful co-host. Greg, introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Greg Lussetto with the Heartland, the regional division of Outlaw.
And who are those clowns? I mean, people above you?
Ooh, Janelle and Evan, who probably will be more regular on the show. So
I feel like their screen froze up on me a little bit. It
kind of looks that way.
Yeah, Evan's being quiet, so I'm a little nervous. They'll be back. And holy cow, the kids are coming in. I heard we're interviewing Holden Joseph Hoffman tonight. Is this true?
Yep, and his sidekick Kyle.
Yep. Holden, we need to know your last 4 digits of your social security number and that little 3-digit code on the back of your credit card.
Yeah.
I don't even know those numbers.
I don't even know those numbers. So.
Yeah. Kyle's one of our promoters with the Hayward and Iowa poll. Was a very neat poll last year. Actually, was with the main outlaw circuit where we did natural 2-wheel drives and super farms. They got a lot of both of those right in that area, and this year they're changing up a little bit. And with us, they're going to run. Step back here. The 3200 Super Field and the Light Limited Pros on the Heartland side, and the natural 2-wheel drives on the outlaw side. But along with that, Kyle's got one heck of a farm pole that goes along with that. And Kyle, I guess I might just have you kind of run through the event a little bit and like where your farm stuff has come from, where it's went. Because I mean, you guys I got there last year and there was a stinking pile of farm tractors. I really enjoyed watching it.
Yep. If anyone ever thinks that we are in the heart of it, boy, we are. The Outlaws, I would tell you the majority of them, I mean, they're based right around Rock Valley area. And the heart of it in the farm country is no different than the Outlaws. Right in our area, we have 5 or 6 poles that are non-sanctioned. They're all, just a brush pole, and then we have a handshake agreement to never get too far off the center. To back it up, I started the Akron pole in 07. I shouldn't say I started it. I kind of recontinued it. My dad started it in the late 80s. It was the Town and Country days. And then when the town had their 125th celebration in 2007, they were looking for somebody to do it. And they approached my dad, and he had said he was too old and didn't have the energy to do it, and said, well, I know a young buck that does. And I took it over from there. And we added the Alcester pole after that, and I kind of got up and running, and we handed it back off. And since then, Beersford, they've adopted those rules. Beersford, South Dakota, Lennox, South Dakota, and we're seeing other non-sanctioned poles spring up. Nothing against associations. It just seemed like we have a lot of local farm kids that just want to bring Dad's feed wagon tractor to town. So yeah, there's a huge following in farm pulling. No different than the high horsepower stuff around here. And the way Haywarden happened was the promoters that were previously putting on the outlaw pole, they had done it long enough, and they were looking for some young new blood and some different energy. And it just happened to be that it had come, just before COVID. When COVID happened, everybody was looking for somewhere to pull. And all we did was approach a couple people and say, what would you think about having a super farm class? And boy, did it ever blow up. That was, it was kind of a long night, and we had a bit of learning to do, but it was a lot of fun. And I guess it just kind of spurred all of this. We did the Mid-America deal for a couple of years, and here we are. So we're trying to mix it up, trying to add a little bit of variety every year, a little bit of smoke, a little bit of noise, and everyone seems to be happy.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I was impressed with. It was for Jason and the rest. It was as well organized as any of the big polls I've been to. I mean, that was the great part about it. That thing ran like a Swiss clock. So it was very well done.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think people, it's unfortunate because I've done a bunch of brush polls in Richland Center too, my hometown, Wisconsin up here, where they can still be organized, and get there and get lined up and keep things moving. I think there's that misconception that it has to be a shit show. and it's not. If everybody knows what they got to do and get lined up and get your lineup people and your flag people, and away we go. And you can still put on a great show for the fans. So
yes, and they had a very good crowd too there.
Yep.
So Kyle, one question I have. So you're talking there's like 4 or 5 local polls there that have adopted the rules that you guys are running. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, you don't actually manage them, but it's just like they have agreed to just do the same thing at different venues.
That's right. And it's pretty much, I would tell you, it's kind of like a buffet, and everyone takes a little bit of that buffet, what they want, and takes it back to their table. And they really just kind of cater to each town. If there's anything I could ever preach to any promoter, it's to cater to your locals, whether it's the fans or the pullers. I know you got to keep the people that travel happy as well, but boy, your local crowd, I mean, that's what's paying the bills, and that's who you should cater to.
Absolutely. Oh man. So I tell you the one thing for me, the thing that was a step off the normal out west here, the farm pulling has been non-existent, and it's just amazing to me to see and I mean, there's people that have put a lot of money, time, pride, into some of those farm tractors. So it was a step, because like out here, it's amazing. We have a handful of street pickups, but to be honest with you, it literally goes from antique pulling, which there's still a fair amount around here, to our bigger stuff. And it's like, in some aspects, there's a void there I wish could be filled.
Right. It's crazy how fast it switches. Like you're saying, out west, you got mostly trucks, and you don't have to go very far from here, a couple hours east, and it is mostly trucks again, to where they're like, we don't know about these tractor guys, man, that's the last thing we want to do is have a bunch of complaining tractor guys. But it's always interesting, I guess. It doesn't have to be your cup of tea, whether it's trucks or mini rods or big diesel smokers. Everyone can appreciate what the other guy does.
Yes. But Jason, where are we pulling pictures up here?
From their website, the ATTP website.
Okay, so can you explain to me what the ATTPA or the ATTPA is?
ATPA was a while ago, Lussetto.
No, I've been both there. Yes.
I'm just messing with you, buddy.
So we don't have, association, and we don't collect points. One of the promotions we're actually going to do this year, for all of our local polls that are non-sanctioned, we don't want to collect points. We want it to be fun, and we don't want something as simple as a mismeasurement or a just a human error to ruin someone's night, right? So anyhow, we don't collect points, but this year we're going to collect pints. And now I always tell everyone to, hold their drinking until after they've hooked, and if they can't, then they just belong, in the bleachers. But the ATTP, I would tell you, I mean, I just felt like we needed, something that we needed to stand behind, and something that kind of keeps you, like I said, close to center, out of the ditches. And that was Akron. It all started from Akron. So it's just Akron truck and tractor pullers. Now we're not all from Akron. There's many from Beersford and Alcester. That's the heart of it. But anyway, that's what ATTP is, even though we don't even have a pull in Akron anymore.
I was going to say, I drove through Akron. There's more of you guys, and Akron didn't look like it was that big.
No, Akron's not. Akron is 11 to 1,200 people. But I'll tell you, there's more people that come and they say, well, how come you're not doing an Akron anymore? Because it was the big boy for the local farm polls. I think for a two hook limit on a farm pole, I want to say the biggest we ever did there was like 184 hooks.
Wow.
So most people that have that many hooks, they're an antique pole, and they're letting you pull,
4 or 5 times.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times, and we weren't that. So it was a 2 hook limit. But Alcester, boy, they're just as big, and they've always been that big. The Union County Fair, if you look them up, Union County, they have a very large following, and they put on one heck of a show. 2 sleds. They run both the Big Red sleds, and if anyone's familiar with them, around us, they you would have thought that Noah had made those sleds because they got a following like the Ark.
Well, I will tell you that's what I had never met the people with the big red sled until last year, but they take a lot of pride and ownership in doing a great job for the farm pullers. And,
Absolutely.
And they absolutely do a great job. You know, it's neat to, you guys are lucky to have them and their efforts with that, you know, because too many times we get the bigger, newer sleds. And I mean, they're just not into the farm pulls. Like, you know,
No,
they'll do it, but it's not quite the same, you know?
There's a few of the owner operators out there of the big sleds, you know, that are pretty good at it. You know, the Rock and the Red Rock, you know, he's really good at
Gary,
it. Yep. Gary Sabatka, he can handle them pretty well.
Yep.
Trying to think the Viper sled, Jay Eulenhack, he handles them very well as too. But I tell you what, these Jeremy and Angie with the big red sled, they're the way that you need to run a business. They listen to the customers, but they don't make a knee-jerk reaction, right? They know. Angie, her favorite saying is that she's with the Rust-eze crowd, right? And I'm that. I really am, right? It's like, man, I don't have the one that's all polished up, and the last time my tractor moved was at the last pull. It got put away. But Jeremy and Angie, boy, they really were a godsend. You know, a lot of the associations around here, Nebraska, Great Plains, and at the time it was West Central. Now it's Western Iowa Pullers. We were all in search of a sled, and like I said, they godsend. They come along, and they're awesome. They're awesome to work with.
Yes, and that's another thing I should tell Jason. We need to get those two on here one night because they would be a blast.
They're a hoot.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. So, I guess we might turn the clock back a little bit. Kyle, you might touch on a little bit like where you guys got started, because I just a little bit that I've got to know you and a little bit of stories I heard. It sounds like pulling's been in your blood for, I'm going to say, close to ever.
Yeah. So Jason, he had a picture up there a minute ago. That was my grandpa's 6030. And that's not the tractor that would have gotten it started all. My grandpa bought an 806 new, and I just posted that the other day. But you know, he pulled that for the first time down in Hinton. And there's the 6030 in Hinton, and Hinton itself was a very legendary pull.
I want video of that tractor. I need video of that, Kyle.
I can supply that.
There's a group up here in Minnesota called the Renegade Pullers in Minnesota, Kyle, and they run wide open with duals on. It is a freaking hoot. It is a hoot.
I've shared that video. It is awesome.
It's a hoot.
Yep.
A hoot, eh?
Yep. So not to get sidetracked, but when we started doing the Akron pull again, and we were doing the dual classes, all we had was, if anyone's familiar with Marv Manifold out of Sioux Falls, but we had Marv's old sled, and then we had the old big red sled, and I'm not saying that the sleds weren't adequate or they're outdated, but I wanted to get the sleds back, and you have to respect other guys' equipment, and everyone always wants to go faster. But when you weigh 20,000 pounds, you're going to tear up some clutches, not of your own, but of that sled's. And so we always kind of kept them at a certain speed to where I knew that the sled guy is going to win too, right? He's not going to feel like you just tore him up and he's got to go back to the drawing board when he gets home. So anyhow, that's story in the duels. But yeah, so Grandpa got it all started with an 806, and then he pulled that 6030 for years, and he was very well known around the area. The Plymouth County Fair, I couldn't tell you how many years in a row we brought home the iron, and it was a blast because there for a while you could just go and get them, right? And it didn't matter. They were if you were on singles, you could just run, and he would outpull with the best of them with that 6030. Now I'll tell you, it's nothing today. I mean, she's just it's a machine shed queen now, and Grandpa, he passed this recently this last year, and so I think its pulling days are probably about done. we'll probably just respect it from here on out. But yeah, that's how we got started. My dad, he's been pulling a D21. He bought his D21 when he was 21 years old. I bought my D21 when I was 21 years old. And so our family, we've been pulling for a long time. I started when I was 15, pulling a 460 Farmall right over here in Merrill, Iowa. My knee was shaking so bad to let that clutch out, and it was kind of when you're pulling away from the sled, you're kind of on an uphill slope. And I just remember watching alongside the track. My dad, he was going to walk along there and tell me when to torque,
Yeah.
And I didn't want to mess it up. So, but yeah, we all pull. I tell you, there's not many colors that we don't have on the farm. We're not prejudiced to anything. We probably have more red pullers just because the parts are readily available and the knowledge is too. So,
yeah, I see. Well, man, with the orange and the green and the red, you've hit most of them right there.
Yeah. But now to go back to Haywarden, if we can double back there. So the Haywarden pole, to give some credit to some people, the Deckers family helps me as well, and that Aaron and Verlin, they still handle all of the track. I don't do anything with the track in Haywarden, and that's a huge help. And I tell you what, I mean, there's people that will just praise the track and their efforts. The city probably don't want to hear this, but we dump thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of water on it during the week, or almost 10 days beforehand. So, but these guys, they do a fantastic job. I mean, they deserve all the praise on that track. And the guys who were running before were Lloyd Deckers and Gary Moffitt. And truthfully, I mean, they got this thing set up from the grandstands to the light, the sound system. It really was turnkey for me to go in there. So when we ran out of room in Akron, there were some businesses expanding. It was a no-brainer. I'd already been asked to come up to Haywarden. It was a very easy move. And the other credit that I need to give is just my friends and my family and my wife, Amy. I couldn't play around and do these polls, without them. Not only could I not do them without them, I wouldn't want to do them without them. The fun would come to an end if they're not there. And I'm sure they when I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, they don't think that I'm having fun. But usually at the end of a successful night, I'm already thinking about next year, right? So from the outside looking in, you don't think that, but
Kyle, you got me beat there. Anytime we put a local poll on here, by the end of the night, I swear I'm never going to do it again. But give me a week, I usually relent, and start making sense.
Kyle, what's one thing you would like to see improved in the polling world?
A lot less squabble. Yeah.
Oh, that's a simple one.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
It is and it isn't.
Right.
So I said it before, there's not enough appreciation for other people. I got a good friend and neighbor that does the mini rods, and they're not my cup of tea, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong in what they do or that we shouldn't appreciate them. I'm going to block this sun here a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wrong way here.
Wrong way.
Where Holden go, Kyle? Did he go inside?
Oh, he's dumping out of his chair here. I think he's had a couple too many Mountain Dews or something.
Mountain Dew loaded.
The other day on pull off, there was people talking about full pulls and 300 feet, and there's something to be said there. I think we've gone so far with pulling that I don't want to say it's not sustainable, but the supply chain issues we've had with parts, in the last couple of years has proved that we've maybe peaked out. And when I said about other people and knee-jerk reactions, I feel the same way, right? You have to be sustainable in what you do. And if you're reliant on a high horsepower machine that can only run down the track once that night, and you can't give the crowd around us, our super farm guys, and this is the example I used the other night, we have Barry Haberhalls with Red Rock, and we got Dakota Deer with the Andrews family, and people love to see those two tractors run. And if you could line them two tractors up and probably run them a dozen times in a row, and people could not get enough of it. So that argument for the 300 foot, what I want to do this year, not to let the cat out of the bag, is at the end of the night, take some of our best competitors from each class, and we're going to run them at the end of the night. So whether they're at a full pull or not, and if they had to take off, then it's going to go to the next guy in line. But we're going to take three of our pullers from each one of the classes, and they're just going to head it off right there. You guys get to watch them again. We talked about doing it. We take our biggest class, and we take the top three out of the biggest class, and we run it at the end of the night. But there's anticipation there. I mean, when we watch those super farm guys and they're local to us, everyone's waiting for those two tractors to hook. And it doesn't mean that they're going to run 1 and 2, but to watch one knock out the other. And it doesn't matter. I'm a fan of both. Right. And I'll scream, and cheer with the best of them, to watch them. But anyway, the sustainability thing and knowing your place, and knowing your crowd, it's a big deal. The Haywarden crowd is a different crowd. If I could improve anything around us, we talked about a little bit before, would be the trucks. We really struggled to get any local trucks in there. I've contacted a couple other. We just don't have them as many. Now there's trucks in the South Dakota area, like around Menno, South Dakota. There's a gob of trucks. Yep. There really are. Now that's about an hour and 45 minutes, I'd say. When you think, Evan, hour and 45?
Yeah. And I remember going out to Menno, just how many of those trucks were out there, and there is a gob.
Yeah, and a lot of them are they're old 60s 2-wheel drive trucks, and it doesn't matter. They pull 10 of them in a row, and you think that they're all the same 10 trucks, but they're not.
No,
it's amazing when you get around. There's pockets of stuff, and things just change from different locations, and I think you'd ram your head against the wall trying to figure it out and probably never figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Dale Bartels just mentioned a Humboldt. I rolled into there with my sled last year, and they had a horse racetrack almost full of street pickups.
Yep.
I just was blown. I mean, it's probably the most I've ever seen anywhere.
Yep. So there are a couple associations, around the Humboldt, Fort Dodge area, and it is all trucks. They have the same thing, 2-hook limit, and they will have over 100 hooks just at a truck pull. They don't even offer a tractor class. So those associations are out there, and they're like I said, they're not very far away. You only got to go 2 hours, less than 2 hours west or less than 2 hours east.
Yeah, Kyle, that's the one thing that I've appreciated talking with you too, and this is something I think that a lot of people we could help pulling in a lot of ways is for us to go in like with obviously I manage in the Heartland region. That's great. We go in there with a couple classes, but you can merge some of the 2 or 3 of these deals together and get the show that you need, and I think if anything I could put out there is the groups I think in the future that work together, and this will go for multiple levels. I think we're going to be better off for that.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree 100%.
That's a good question.
Now,
isn't that kind of America's goal was, Greg?
What's that?
Bring the truck. It wasn't that kind of Mid-America's goal at one time was to bring the trucks on board.
I can't speak for them, but they've got a good following of trucks, and even when we went together with Mid-America and our Heartland deal out west, it's kind of crazy that we probably had more tractors than they did. They had more trucks, and they're not all. We don't always intermingle, but it's kind of interesting how that works. Where groups kind of gravitate one way or the other.
I do.
So I do have a question. You mentioned the mini rods. What kind of mini rods is your local guy that? I mean, are we talking motorcycle engine mini rods or V8s?
Is there a mini rod guy that only owns one?
It's funny. That's
that's a good one.
that's hilarious. Great observation.
Like Oreo.
Generally,
Maybe a
no.
song.
So David and Terry Blackmore are my neighbors, and they have, I don't know what that thing is. It's probably close to a 30-foot car hauler, and it is packed full of them. I would say that they have one in every class, and there's probably some that they have two in those classes.
I'll be darned. Okay.
Yeah. But the thing
Evan
is they
rods.
go ahead.
Evan wants to get into the mini rods.
I wouldn't mind having a smoker. I like the small smokers.
I don't disagree, but when it cost almost as much as a bigger tractor, I was like,
Yeah. So the Blackmore family, they've been pulling for years as well, and they pull farm tractors too. So Terry he they recently went back through their 560, and that 560, I don't want to speak for them, but I bet it was 10 plus years that it just sat out back on their farm. And but he was one of my fiercest competitors when I first started pulling. So I pulled that 460, and I would have been pulling against him. And then when I was 15, my dad, he wouldn't let me buy a Ford Torino, but he let me take out a loan on an 1850 Oliver. So then I turned it into a puller, and then I was, yep.
So is there a brand you haven't messed with?
we own a couple Fords, but we haven't pulled them.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to talk about the Oliver for a minute. The Oliver.
Sure.
The funny part about that tractor is Dad didn't know how I was ever going to make the payments on a car. A monthly payment. So instead he let me borrow the money, and then a kid had to learn how to save his money and not spend it to make an annual payment. Now you tell me how thought out that was.
Worked out for you.
It you know what, it did work out, and that tractor actually put me through college. So I had it paid off, and I wasn't smart enough to look into grants or student loans or anything like that, and I was paying as I went, and I couldn't afford to live in an apartment and pay for school, even working 2.5 jobs. So I borrowed against that Oliver, and it put me through college.
There you go.
It's been paid off twice.
Well, how long have you known Evan? Because Evan's kind of got me introduced to you and the pulling and that. We've talked. Actually, Evan and I've talked a lot about the Akron pull and some of the stuff that went on back in the day. Have you known him for quite a long time as well?
Known Evan my whole life.
Sorry.
Evan and his family are good people. They live right next door to my grandma. And Evan's brother was in my class, and we were really close friends, and Evan was always the good guy until he come around with this what was that, a razor that you had or whatever, and he had to tell me how old school my old Yamaha was and how you dust me.
He did that? Oh, do tell. This is good.
I did too, I think.
Yeah, Evan, he's gone on to greener pastures now. He's pulling. You still have the super field, right, Evan?
It's anyways, I think it's raining.
And Evan moved on to browner pastures. If Wyoming's not always green.
That's true.
Hey, it's green now, yeah. No,
for now.
Yep.
We're trying to get Evan back into pulling.
Well, you've got a chance, I will tell you that.
But if another tractor was for sale, Kyle, if somebody wanted to sell it back,
I know there might be a 1466 for sale.
I figured that.
Maybe a 14.7.
14.7, huh?
14.7.
Is that your tractor?
He has a mini wild hair down there, don't you?
I don't think he stands a chance. He's going to be involved, isn't he?
So Evan, he supported the Akron Track Pull even after he left. And to touch on, like good sponsors and good people, Evan wasn't even around the Akron community anymore, but he was still sending me sponsorship money, and he would give it to where I think it really matters, and we would put it on the pedal pole when we had it in Akron. We'd buy all the trophies, and we'd buy all the kids ice cream, and Evan was our sponsor, even though he was all the way out in Wyoming. So you don't have to be a puller to be involved in pulling. There is a lot of good people around the sport that aren't pullers, whether they're a sponsor or just a friend of pulling. Evan's one of those guys. I have friends, that help me every year, and they aren't necessarily pullers, and I'm surprised they're still my friend, after all these years putting on pulls. But it takes good people like Evan, and good friends to make all these things happen every year.
Well, and you've always ran such a quality show, and it was one you didn't want to see here.
No, it was
people.
Yep.
Did you miss it?
Yeah.
What do you miss most about it?
Just it was always a well-run farm show, and it was always a nice break from whereas the other associations, even though we didn't always agree on everything, it was always just a well-run quality show.
Yep.
And everybody had a place.
Yeah. One thing, I never, Evan, I know you're not, but one thing about the associations around here is they actually set the bar really high, and you can't have a brush pull and have it unorganized. Otherwise, guys will push away from the table, so whether it's Great Plains, or Nebraska, and truthfully, even Outlaw, right? It's like, man, you go to these polls and sometimes you just take notes and you're like, wow, that I see that and that works.
Yeah.
And I think I can incorporate this into what we do, and I think it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know Evan moving out here, I think it was kind of a culture shock to come from where they had these farm pulls and, like all of that kind of pulling. Outlaws just around. Literally you guys are 30, 40 miles from Rock Valley.
Yep.
And it come out west and when he was clearing Western Wyoming, it's not that way. There's
Right.
a little bit like Janelle, you have a little bit to do with that Saratoga deal. There's some antique stuff. And then if you head clear out west, it's just a different style of pulling,
Yep.
Different style of people too.
Well, for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
there's still a lot of interest in pulling, and that's even in my area, the farm pulling was big until it died in the 80s, and it just never came back.
Yep. Years ago when my brother was in the military and he was, graduating from boot camp, or he was completing boot camp, we went down to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And even though we're tractor pullers and I used to ride motocross, we are slow drivers when you're in a pickup or a car. And I still remember my dad, we rented this Pontiac Bonneville, and I tell you what, we run the wheels off of that thing. And we were at a truck stop and we saw a couple tractors. I don't know if it was tractors or trucks, but we went and approached the guys and said, well, where's the pull at? And they said, oh, it's, so far over this way. And, just follow me. We're heading there. And I tell you what, I never seen those guys from the sticks move so fast with a couple of units on the trailer. But we found them. And when you talk about how different pulling is, I don't even remember what the name of the town was there, but it was kind of the same deal. There was probably one small tractor class and the rest was all truck engines,
Yeah.
So it's completely different, and you don't have to go very far, whether it's, a state away or two, we were just talking about it. 2 hours can make a big difference, whether it's east or west.
Yes.
Very much
Yes.
so. Yeah.
Yep. Jason, this is kind of a little bit with you. One thing I'm looking forward to too is we're gonna do our best to live stream this event. I got the blessing from the big boss to film the whole thing, so we should.
Cool.
I'm excited to get some of these guys, get that stuff out there because
That'll be great.
Yeah, get some exposure. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it all deserves coverage. It's just, but Kyle, it's like to just even get volunteers to help with everything else. You know what I mean? So.
Yep.
Absolutely.
How do you think you can get more kids involved? The younger generation. Granted, none of us are that old, but you think about it, you got to it's got to keep growing, and you got to keep getting the younger generations involved.
So before I was married, I would tell you that wasn't who I was necessarily catering to. I mean, it was a big deal to have a pedal pull in Akron, and no one ever wanted to see us stop doing that. But once I got married, my wife said, "Boy, you're missing a demographic that really matters." And I tell you, we've really shifted focus to that in the last few years. And the younger that you can get the seed planted, the better off you're going to be. I mean, and sometimes it scares me at polls as a promoter, and it makes me nervous, when it gets dark, and kids are running around, but we try to supply the kids with goodies. Actually, Jason has supplied me with coloring books in the past. We hand out the glow sticks and the glow wristbands, and they might only watch 5 minutes of pulling, and they might run around for the next 2.5 hours, but they're going to remember that they were at a tractor pull, and they're going to remember what their favorite part was, and all that matters is that they had a good time. I mean, if I'm not pulling at a pull, usually I'm BSing, right? And
Yeah.
I don't actually get to watch much of a pull, but I remember it was a good time.
It's like going to an auction. Sometimes you don't go to the auction for necessarily to buy. It's to visit with everybody else, and because you have a good time and because you enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, and you may have to help me out with some names. Part of the stuff that I love too is it's been probably since 15 or 16 since I had my sled out there doing some pulls, but there was a young kid running a 1066 or something similar, I believe from South Dakota. Summertime something was the name of it. Does that ring a bell to you? It was awesome to see that this kid looked like he was 10 years old. I'm sure he might have been a little older, but man, he run that tractor like you can tell that kid had been. It wasn't his first rodeo, man. But it was cool to see those kids like that are on the farm and still actively working, and see them go get to enjoy that.
So
appreciate it.
That's the Chose family, and they named that tractor Summer Vacation.
There you go. Thank you, Dale.
I love it.
Yep, there he is. There's Dale. So Summer Vacation, he's been pulling. So we actually had to change our rules a couple of years ago, and I'm not saying it was because of him, but it was for safety. We went to a 13-year-old limit. And just because the nerves in a kid aren't the same as in an adult, and you guys know the same thing. The day that you lose those nerves, and kind of that's the day you probably need to quit. If you're not conscious of what you're doing, and maybe just it doesn't hurt to be overcautious and always kind of be worried about that stuff. But anyhow, the nerves of an adult are completely different than a kid. But anyhow, but he pulled a B John Deere in Alcester, and I'm pretty sure that he had to use the hand clutch with his leg.
Well, the thing I've seen over the years too, and it's so hard because their age limits are one way to restrict it, or and necessary. But I've seen some adults that aren't ready get thrown on stuff, and you get some of these kids that are it's not going to be an issue. But sometimes you just have to draw a line, and it's unfortunate.
Oh yeah, we had a kid a couple years ago. He come off the line, and I tell you what, when I say kid, he's like 16 years old. It's what our open farm is now. So it's a 22, 23 mile an hour class now. But he got it shut down. He got it shut down, and I don't even know if he went 100 foot. And he come over to apologize and said, "Man, you don't have to apologize to me for anything. I've had moments that I'm not proud of, or I don't know if it's a pride, or if you almost freeze like a deer, or you're just like so." I don't know. I was too proud, and I thought I can correct it, right? And I should have shut. There's people from Inwood that probably still hope I don't come back after the ride that I displayed.
Well, things happen, and there's none of us are perfect. Heck, last year I've been driving pulling tractors since I was 16 years old, and I turn the dang wheels with the front end in the air. I mean, who doesn't get preached to about that? And it's like,
Right.
what the heck? You look back and see the picture, and I'm like, what the heck were you doing?
Yep.
Yep. We all screw up. We're none of us are perfect.
Yep. But going back to these kids and getting them involved, so we've tried we're trying to do all this stuff we can, and we do a t-shirt toss that we usually have a sponsor for,
Great.
and if the kids don't get a t-shirt, then we'll sell them. And I never want to make any money off the t-shirts. I'm just tickled if we break even. And usually if they don't get one tossed to them, then they go running over. And usually anytime I got extras at the end of the night, I go handing them out, give them to the kids. But the other thing is, we always had the FFA group do the concessions in Akron, and we have the 4-H group do the concessions in Haywarden. That's their biggest fundraiser of the year, and those kids don't forget it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone that is ever put on a pole or promoted knows that it needs to be fair and it needs to work for everybody. Everybody should walk away that night or that day feeling like they won, right? Not that they got over on somebody else, but that it felt like a fair deal, and they're satisfied with what they put in and with what they took out.
Yes.
Hey, Kyle.
Yep.
This Minneapolis Moline, this guy's got the coolest beard and the biggest stack I've ever seen at the same time.
So that's
That
that.
neat?
That's another guy from Merrill, Iowa, and that's Mike Holtz, and that actually come out of Minnesota. And that tractor's kind of without a home. It's a big cube gas engine, and it thing just screams. But I don't think he cares, where he finishes, and he's happy with an exhibition hook. So we usually run him with the open farm guys. And I guess when he starts kicking everyone's butts, then we'll probably have to worry about it, But for now, that's where we put him, and it is the coolest tractor in the world. I just wish he had a big diesel smoker in it, so that way we could really see it run.
There's some characters there, and Marv, I can't think of his last name right now with the orange frustration.
Marv Heisman. Yep.
Oh my goodness, he cracked. Yeah, right. If you go back one right there, and would you have a picture? What did he have last year? Was it a 70-80 or 70-60, Alice?
I believe
With
it's 70. It should be in there somewhere.
Mark,
Jason,
shout out to Mark Ham, by the way, for Ham Boys Racing Toys for all
Yeah.
these great pictures. So
Yep.
You gotta find a picture of that 70-60 or whatever it was with the floater tires on it, Jason. It was
yeah, I saw it.
Oh my Lord. I walked around, I've seen a lot of stuff. I had to go check that out. And I
Is
made
this one
sure
of
I was
yours?
around.
Is this one of yours, Kyle?
That's my dad's. Yep.
That is
Yeah.
sharp.
So that's the one he bought when he was 21 years old.
Yep.
Wow.
And that tractor is 100% original.
Don't you wish you could have paid what he paid for his
Oh my
when
gosh.
you bought yours?
I paid less.
What? Really?
Good for you.
That is sexy right there. That
There
is
it is.
sexy. Look at that.
That's pretty fun.
So
Mar's a character.
That's a comfy ride.
So to tell you a little bit more about, I would say why our non-sanctioned rules seem to work is, that tractor kind of exemplifies it. We let these guys, run a whatever tire size you want, and he's not the first person to throw some oddball metric tire on. We've had other guys try it. Whether it works for your drawbar height or it's something you just got laying around and you want to give it a try. That's a cool thing. And people might think that, well, I just did it, because my dad's had them 30.5 32s in the D21 forever. And yeah, there's some of that. Of course I want my dad to pull with me, but there's a good reason right there too. And I know a guy that's building a tractor right now, and he's planning on showing up with 30 points this year too. And all these associations, they're all still stuck on a 20.8 38 that there's not a farm tractor that's made with them anymore. So,
Well, the other part about this to me is you get some guys that want to come and just play. They're not worried, and just like you said about the points, and they just want to hook, and sometimes there's a place for that.
Yep.
So
it's
hard to do that in our bigger associations, but like this is, to me, is perfect.
Right.
I agree.
Yep. That was, when we started doing this, we just didn't want them to all look like a stock car that showed up. We wanted to get every color and every bit of different variety and let these guys play. you know, whether it was a case and he had a 504 block and, you know, instead of the 451, or if it was a guy that had something besides a 3LM turbo. You know, I'm not going to turn him away. I mean, look at how many 10 millimeter A pumps got mounted to the side of a tractor just based out of convenience. You know, I mean, the one thing that I could also kind of, you know, convey to people is these parts are getting harder and harder to come by. You
Oh my
know,
gosh,
there's no more 450 Maruza Master guys, and the 13 model 100s. They cost more to build than any P pump that's just laying around on someone's bench somewhere. You know, and I know which one would be more dependable and which one I can create horsepower cheaper for, and then I don't have to run ungodly RPMs to make it spin. So, you know, this tire thing, I've mentioned to a couple people too. You know, these 20 points, they're going to get harder and harder to come by, and guys are going to leave them on their parade tractors, and it won't be long, and all of us are going to be looking for they're going to be looking for Jason's tires that he's only spun 3 times for me to put on my open farm.
There's a lot of Firestone 24.5s out there now, Kyle. a lot.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of groups that are you know missing out on that. I mean, there's a ton of tires out there, and really these full cuts or double cuts, boy, they're readily available. You know.
Yeah. I think it'd be sweet to see a bunch of farm tractors with 24.5s on it. I think it looked cool as hell. So.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what, you look at the supply, new tractors aren't running 18.438s and 20.838s anymore.
Nope.
You know, that supply is going to get used up. And you mentioned this earlier, like with the pulling, it has changed, and we can say everything we want to, but we have to find a way to manage going forward and make it work. You know, some of the good old days are, while I miss them, they're not coming back.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, we're still pulling the tractors that my grandpa pulled. Right.
Yes.
And what I said about that 60/30, it won't be long. You know, I mean, there's still a ton of guys that are taking a 4440 and they're putting it, you know, on the manure pump or whatever. Right. And they're just running the guts out of them. And it won't be long to where you just don't want to take your tractor and do that with it, right? It doesn't matter if it's a pulling tractor or whatever, and they're going to become a machine shed queen. So I think the time. I mean, it might not even be in my lifetime. You know, it might be in Holden's lifetime, but there will be a time where, you know, a lot of these are a fabricated machine, right? And they might resemble, you know, a 4020 or a 1066 or a 4430. But there won't be much there that's that. It's just a stock car.
Yeah. Well, I've seen an evolution of the diesel, like street pickups out here in Colorado, especially, to where they went like gangbusters, and then pretty soon, now with the price of them and the emissions, they're starting to wane. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to see what changes, you know, because again, things just change, and sometimes it's out of our control.
Yep. You know, I always look for what people will say. Oh, that's the 4020 of a skid loader, or that's the 4020 of a truck, right? Like, what's something that they made gobs of, and guys almost thought they were bulletproof, and you just keep going back to the well, right? When we were talking earlier about the Chose kid, you know, he was this scrawny little kid before, and now he's like every other, you know, 18-year-old kid around here wearing a mullet, and he drives a diesel truck that's got a couple 100,000 miles. And I really think that there's going to be a time where all these, you know, Dodge Cummins, you know, or a Chevy Duramax or a Ford Power Stroke, you know, those are what the kids know. I mean, these tractors that we farm with today. And I don't want to say that's not a future, but there's the cool factor isn't there, and it's not there for me, and I don't think it's there for the kids. The cool factor is still in taking Dad's old truck, you know, and blowing some smoke.
Well, that's how it all started, Kyle. Honestly, taking Dad's tractor to the fair and asking if he could turn up the pump in the 60s and 70s, you know, and then the smaller family farms kind of went away, and then that joy of driving the 4020 or the D21 or the 1066. And I live in a town of 5,000 people. I can't drive across town in Richland Center, Wisconsin without seeing at least 2 or 3 kids with the hood stack out of a piece of shit Dodge pickup. And they just race from stoplight to stoplight. And I race them all the time in my truck and my Escalade. And I just smoke them.
Yep.
But then they catch up with you and then they go, whoa, and they blow a bunch of smoke. And I just laugh and laugh and laugh.
Yep. Yep.
Hey,
Oh,
the big red sled's checking in, guys. So
awesome.
yeah. Because you can't wait for Warden. Hey, Warden. I said it right, Kyle. Kyle and I did some hooked on phonics before I started here. Hey, Warden. He said add a Y. So
we probably
I don't know.
should.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. We should talk about that a little bit because that's coming up. That's June 23rd, correct? Friday night.
Yep. Friday, June 23rd, 6 p.m. And we'll have the Heart 2 class, the Heartland Superfield Light Limited Pro, and we'll have the Outlaw 2-wheel drive naturally aspirated. So, and then we'll have a handful of the local farm classes.
Farm classes. What weight classes? What's your lightest weight class?
7,700 pound farm class. That's 7 mile per hour. Then the biggest class of the night guaranteed will be the 10-7 farm. I think last year we had like 23 in there.
Yeah.
In the 10-7, and then we'll have a 12-7 farm as well. Those are all 7 mile per hour classes. Then we'll have an altered farm, and we normally run a little heavier, but this year we're going to go a little bit lighter. We're going to run 11.5 on the altered farm. That's a 13 mile an hour class. And the altered farm, we pretty much tell you just bring it and hope you brought enough. But it's 13 mile an hour. That's the rule.
Okay.
We are. It's kind of the first year we're going to monitor RPMs, and when I say we're going to do it, I mean everybody, and it can't ever be policed by one person. This is truthfully, and it's nothing wrong with associations, but it's just where people will they'll start to point fingers or point blame when they should probably be pointing back at themselves. But I mean, so Greg, if you go to gun someone, you're the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
So anyhow, we did add a 3,000 RPM limit on all the tractor classes, and I don't want to be the one. I don't want to be the one to police it. No different than nobody likes the government, so it's not going to be me. It's gonna be policed by the pullers.
Is there on your website? Is there a link to rules and stuff where people are looking?
I have not posted the rules yet this year. It's not going to be all that far off from previous years. I think that's the only rule change that we have.
Okay.
We did change the protest. Previously, we had the protest rule. It had to be done when someone was on the track. Well, you know how hard it is to run down an official, and usually the guy flagging, even though everyone has it in their rules that they're the judge, well, he's not the judge on everything. Usually it's someone up at the table or it's the guy running around. So,
yes.
If it's me or if it's one of the other officials that's carrying the gun around, you're not always going to be easy to run them down. But so we'll give you till the end of the class to make a protest on any kind of protest. But once that class is over, your protest isn't relevant because you or the other guy might have 5 or 6 beers in there, and I don't want to have a conversation about someone's RPMs then, and I'm not going to go gun your tractor.
Right.
When you're 5 or 6 beers in either. So
what's like the entry fee and paybacks and stuff for the other classes? Like
$25 a hook. It's a one hook only night. So unless we do what we were mentioned earlier, we're talking about taking a top dog out of 3 classes, and then you're just going to go and you're going to line them back up at the end of the night.
Yep. Okay.
And that'll be a free hook for you, and we'll still have some payback. I've never run a poll where we haven't had 100% payback. I think the best we probably ever did was a 200 and some odd percent payback. You got to take care of the people that are putting on the show.
Sure.
Yep.
Hey, Greg, you guys can keep going. I got to go start another show, okay? Kyle's on a roll tonight. I don't want to end this. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I should probably fold it in half and then fold it in half again.
This is. There's a lot of people watching. A lot of this is good. This is why we do this, Kyle. So I'm gonna be. Greg, just text me when you guys are done, and I'll shut the live stream off. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. So the other thing
Yeah,
I
go
have to
ahead,
say
Kyle.
about Hayward, people always wonder, our coolers welcome. Coolers are always welcome. We got all kinds of grandstand seating. We got plenty of room for you to back your pickup up and watch off your tailgate. We got room for you to bring your camp tent and your chairs and watch that way too. So,
Yeah, that's neat. I do love some of the grassroots pulling because too many times, I mean, the big pulls are nice, but it's neat to go back to some of this stuff. I do truly enjoy it.
yep. I asked my boy before we got on. I said, "What was your favorite pull?" And I listed them off for him. And I asked if it was in the tiny town of Westfield. So last year, Westfield's a population of 100, and we quadrupled that the night of the pull.
Yeah.
And I asked him if it was in Akron or if it was in Hayward or if it was in Rock Valley, and he said it was in Rock Valley. So just because this is the poll that I put on doesn't mean that's what you have to like. He probably liked it because they have the suckers that are the 2-color suckers. You got
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's a
Yep.
little thing.
Yep. So
Kyle, I have a question for you. We had a bad storm out here, so we lost connection at the very first, but I don't think this has been asked. So tell me, how did you really get into the promoting the poll?
So, in 07, Akron, they approached my dad because he had put on the poll in Akron in the late 80s and early 90s, and it was the town's 125th celebration. And they were looking for someone to put on a poll. And he said, "No, thanks, but no thanks. But why don't you call my son?" So then they called me, and then he hadn't even told me they were going to call. And then I called him like, "I don't know anything about doing this." And he's like, "Well, you need to do this and this and this and this and this." And like I mentioned before, we have great associations around us that set the bar high. And that first year, I want to say we had probably like 131 hooks, and it was on a Sunday, kind of late afternoon going into evening. And it might have still been the biggest crowd that we ever had that first year I did it. And I guess I kind of got hooked. I think we only took we might have only took one or 2 years off between 2007 and 2019. But every year we've tried to tweak it, try to change some things. And I just love it. Truthfully, I mean, people will be like, "You must be crazy," right? And like I said, running around these poles, it looks like I'm not enjoying myself. And when you have a success, it's no different than farming. You have a successful year, and it kind of pays for the bad years, right? Like last year, Hayward was so much fun, and we were done at a decent time. I'm not sure what time Greg packed up and left, but it was a nice night. And at the end of the night, I'd had people ask me to do Westfield for the last handful of years, and it was like, "Yep, I'm going to do it. I want to do it." And I was already planning for Hayward for the next year. And the truth is, I'm already planning for Hayward for next year, and we haven't even already started. I think, it's no different than a puller. If you like being a promoter and you like showing people a good time, right? You like to put on a party. You like to put on a family picnic or whatever, right? There's people that they base their whole summer off of that, and I guess I'm one of those people. I mean, that's the biggest party I can put on all year long, is to bring, hundreds of people to town, and I don't get to watch the poll. I just run around shaking hands and handing out waters or beers or pop or pork sandwiches or whatever we have around. But it's a blast. I just love it. I mean, besides my wife and my kids, it's the next closest thing I have to a love. I mean, I love farming, I love cattle, but I really like putting on polls.
Janelle, he has your class, by the way, too, just so you know.
Okay. And then, so how are you going to get Evan more involved in this?
I'm sorry?
How are you going to get Evan more involved?
Evan's going to be there that night.
Aren't you at a conference that night?
Yeah, I won't be there. I'm going to be I got asked to speak at a national conference, so I'm going to be there. So I told Evan he can take my tractor.
This is working out.
That'd be all right.
I like where this is going. Did he get rid of his helmet, or is he going to have to wear the pink helmet?
No, he's going to have to wear the pink one.
Heck yeah.
Nothing ever works out like I had planned, Greg.
Hey, if you don't have the pink thing, I'll have my daughter's Jazz. Jazz has a Tinkerbell helmet. You can always wear that, Evan. Well, he's awful quiet.
Well, Evan, if you come back home, I'll find a tractor for you to sit on, or I'll find a job for you that fits just right.
I figured you would. I appreciate that.
We might ask this question: would Kyle have time to run a tractor that night?
I usually try, but it's tough. I mean, I have to be weighted beforehand and scaled and kind of ready to go. And usually it's not very well prepared. I mean, I usually don't know what I'm running for air pressure in the tires, and do I even have enough fuel for it to make a pass? So I put way more effort into promoting than I do in the pulling tractor.
Well, that's welcome to my world. I run into that trouble out here quite often.
Yep.
Does the Oliver still come out?
The Oliver will come out every now and then. It's kind of outclassed. Nebraska, they have some no turbo classes that I'll go down there. But since Dad he pulls that 666 now, and I can't compete with that. So
where did that tractor come from?
Washington.
I thought so. That thing looked awful familiar.
Yep.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yep. Bob.
I know exactly. I know the tractor. I've talked to him and I've seen it. And I follow the pulling up in that part of the world, and he was a staple up there.
Yep.
But
yeah, I don't know how they brokered that deal, but I think Dad and Bob, they didn't know each other from a bale of hay, and they just kept exchanging emails to start, and then they were exchanging back, and then they were calling back and forth all the time, making sure the other guy was going to be protected. And I don't want to come all the way out there to buy a tractor, and I don't want to have to drive the tractor all the way out there and come home, whatever. And so, but they brokered the deal, and it's actually been a pretty fun little tractor. So,
what I know of Bobby's a pretty good guy too. So,
yep. I think when he represented it, it was everything, and a little more. So
you guys are just a long ways apart. That's the hard thing.
Right. Yep. Yeah. He's told my dad he'd like to turn a wrench on my tractor, and it's like, I'd like to get him out of here.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Because he's pretty good. Go ahead.
So Kyle, when do you want to start promoting more shows? When are you going to branch out and start getting big time with this?
I think my place is in the towns that are closest to me. Truthfully, I've been asked, by other associations, will you come and hold a position, in our association, or would you consider starting another association up? And I just really like focusing on my efforts on my local towns. Truthfully, Haywarden is, 20, it's less than 25 minutes, like 20 minutes north, right? I'm 15 minutes from most of the towns around me, and Haywarden's just a little outside of it. And it's crazy. It's completely different than Akron. It's completely different than Westfield. It's completely different than Lamar's. So I'm still learning there, but I feel like where I belong is just promoting my hometown polls. And I got kids. I have kids that are growing up. They're both going to be playing T-ball this year. And the older they get, the harder it's going to be for me to keep this up. And I've said it several times, whether you're tractor pulling or whether you're pole promoting, what you do needs to be sustainable. I remember who I was talking to, but when you get these kids too to run these concession stands, or to have a pedal pull or whatever, you don't want to let these people down either. That poll's a big deal to them, whether it's generating funds for them, and sometimes in these towns, like in Westfield, that's the only event that town has had in years. So you don't want to let the people down. And I think the thinner that you get spread, at some point in time, you're bound to take the path of least resistance. And it just, if let's just say if Lamar's was to come calling, it'd be a hard no, because everything's turnkey. They got the bathrooms right there, and they take care of the concessions, and they build the track, and
Lamar's
they
has
got
got an
sound-
amazing facility too.
That's right. I'm surprised that it's taken this long to get the Outlaws in there, you know.
Yeah.
And I hope that they're able to keep it going. And I'm not saying that I would never want to see a farm pole there, but it was probably time for a scenery change. And like I said, I just as long as the fair's happy and the town and the people are happy and Outlaws happy, then they should just try to keep it going.
Yeah. Kyle, I look at this like you have a pretty good plan in place that you could pass this off. You grow that kid up another 20 years, you could do the same thing your dad did to him.
It sounds like a good deal.
Hey kid, have I got a deal for you? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one thing, you know, if you can cater to a town, you know, whether you're an association or whatever, if you cater to that town and not just the guys that are traveling to come there, but if you can find a way to cater to that town and to its local, you'll plant a seed that it might take a handful of years, but you'll get some young blood that wants to come in and take over. I mean, and he wasn't always my neighbor kid, but my neighbor kid, he's the one that wants to do Westfield, and it's not going to be me that keeps doing it. I told him I'd help him for the first couple of years, and you can take it over. And he's young and he's aggressive, and then we're going to let him do it. So
Yes.
Whether it's Haywarden or whatever, I'm sure Holden someday I'll talk him into it. I'll let him have his hand at it.
Yeah. So are you from Akron then?
Westfield.
Westfield.
Yeah.
And where is that located?
Westfield and Akron. They're just a handful of miles apart. Same school. Same school.
Oh, the schools combined. I think I saw that on the sign there. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Westfield's the hometown. Akron's where I went to school. So Westfield is where my dad went to school. The old school's still there. When 400 people were in town of Westfield, the streets were full and they were all parking around the old school that's, still standing there. So,
yeah.
But,
Do you have any Frerick stories like I'm sure Evan does?
No comment.
Couple.
No comment.
I'm out.
Nope. Keep going.
Yeah.
We were
Quite
always
the con.
You're always okay.
Yeah, I've heard a few stories that Evan may have needed a change of scenery.
No comment.
I have a story.
Face is a little red.
I have a quick story about Evan.
Oh, let's hear it.
So we were talking about the Plymouth County Fair, and one year, and I don't remember how far along we were in the poll, but it just started to downpour, and most people are probably celebrating the downpour or rain in July. Like thank God, we got a rain here in July when right through the stretch we needed it. But the boys, they decided it was a good time to go and do cookies, and I don't know, pretty much got close to doing demo derby on the track. Now, Evan, how'd that deal turn out for you?
I was proudly banned from that poll for a couple years with pride, but they did, and I'm still proud of that. And yeah, it was worth it. I'd do it again. I told you that. In fact, my dad would join me.
Oh, I bet he would.
And I hope he's watching. Yeah. It'd be nice to show back up there again sometime.
Yeah. In Akron, we always had this big, what they call it was like this retention pond, or it was a hole for all this runoff, and Evan's actions that day kind of would always remind me every year. It's like they'd be like, "Do you really need to put up this snow fence around this hole?" And I'm like, "No, if we ever get to rain in here, people are gonna think that hole looks like a lot of fun with their pickup or their tractor or whatever."
Yeah, this one time this happened, and we cannot do that again. Yeah.
Oh, we can. How many times do you go through there?
Several. It's only a couple-year ban. I mean, there's a lot of polls.
So, Evan, what's the probability we get to see you back there?
If Janelle will let me take her tractor and she needs a ride, I mean, we'll be around this summer. You just never know what we're up to. I guess you'll just have to stay tuned.
With Daniel too.
Yeah.
Oh, mercy. I have a feeling if we get him, Joey, and Frericks together, it could
I'm sure we'll be in church the next day.
probably will need to be in church. Is that what you said?
My mother will be there, so
Yes.
we've grown up a little bit since then.
Yeah.
Really,
If it rains,
really.
no bets are off the table, Kyle. But just tell the fair board to leave this time. We got work to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Kyle, is there any sponsors you need to thank or anything? Poll wise?
You
I
bet.
know you had a lot.
You bet. I'm not gonna go through the whole list here. I just want to.
Sure.
I just kind of want to hit a few. Some of these that are I'd tell you staples of whether it's whether it was the Akron truck and tractor pull or it's now in Haywarden, but the one is our poster boy. And I actually I don't know if it's Terry or his son, but Terry's Repair is a big sponsor. And if anyone knows, what him and the family had to have happen to him last year, they had their rig burn up and lost both their pulling trucks, in that fire, and they're resurrecting them, and that's where the theme is this year. We got his truck on the poster, and it's legends will rise, right? So Terry's Repair, he's a big sponsor and a big supporter. Yep. And in Haywarden we have Obink Pioneer Seed and Insurance, and Brian was a huge supporter of the Outlaw Grand National polls before I come into Haywarden, and he's stuck on with us, and he's a big supporter, of what we're doing too. So and then the other ones are my friends, State Line Customs, and that's Andy Less and Tristan Golden. And they're neighbors, just like Evan was, and they've been supporters, whether it's financially or just lending a hand. They don't miss a poll that I promote and that I help with, and I can't thank them guys enough. There's a ton more sponsors. I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to those guys.
Absolutely.
You can't do it. You can't do it without the sponsors and anyone that promotes. That you want to give them guys their due time too.
Yes. I'll tell you, going back to the deal with Terry, we were running that poll up in Humboldt, and I will tell you that was the saddest thing I think I've ever seen.
Yep.
Because we all knew something happened. It literally happened in town, in Humboldt, and an hour later, as we were getting started in the poll, here comes Terry in with no trailer, and it's just, I mean, the devastation of it. At that time, you didn't know what was going to be even salvageable, and then to be 150 or whatever miles from home.
Right.
I mean, it's just brutal.
Yeah. And not to make less of, someone, I'm glad that nobody got hurt. Right. But that's
right.
But that's, I think for the pulling community, you looked at the pictures and Terry's such a good guy too. He's got such a great heart, and I mean, he really wants this poll, to always happen in Hayward, and I think anyone that knows him, loves him, right? So when you saw that picture, it was kind of like you saw someone's kid get hurt. That's how, like I said, not to make less of someone getting hurt, but that's how you felt. It was kind of heart wrenching to see the pictures. So
it's also the investment, and everything, and it's not always insured probably like it could or should be, and it's just a pretty devastating deal. But I mean, I can't wait, and I can't believe the wrap and the stuff of the truck that's coming back singed and stuff. That's gonna be one heck of a story, man. That's unbelievable.
Yep, it looks awesome. I think. I mean, I might be biased, and it helps that you like the guy, and you like the story too, right? It's like I said, it's a great story. I'm sure it didn't seem that great when it was happening to him, but like anything else, the second time you already are more knowledgeable too. So they got that going for them. As long as you get the parts.
Nobody's more optimistic than the pullers, take the crappy situation and make the best out of it, and be back at it this summer already.
Yep. Was there any other questions anybody had?
No, I haven't seen anything. Evan and Janelle, you guys got anything else?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
No, well, we can wrap this up. And Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on and, telling the story. And if you want to do it again, maybe the week of or whatever, don't reach out.
You bet. You bet. Yep. If anyone wants to come to Haywarden, you come find me and I'll get you yourself a cold drink, whether it's a water or a pop or a beer. And I'll be glad to have anyone that's never been there. Just come and I'll take care of you.
If they don't have a good time, it'll be their fault.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Kyle, thank you for taking a little time tonight. Evan, Janelle, same with you guys.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, everybody. You guys take care.
All right. We'll see you. Thanks.
Hi, Greg.
How are you,
Oh, thank
Evan?
I'm
Oh.
pretty good. How are you?
Hi, Greg.
Good.
Good.
Oh, hi, Greg.
That guy made it home.
Oh, he got wet.
I'm fucking soaked, but
We're not on live stream anymore, are we?
Yeah, we are.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So put the bear down, Dan. Your other brother Dan or whatever that Daniel the bear.
He's back there.
Yep. No, I gotta text Jason now and he'll shut it off. He's off doing the West Coast show.
okay.
That went good tonight.
We're still
Yeah.
on.
Well,
Yep.
With Kyle, it's par for the course.
Yeah.
Better
great
not
guy.
text Kyle.
Yeah, wrong person. Zach, text for him.
Yep. Hang on 1 second here. We'll see if we can get him to come in here.
Zach, how's your tractor coming?
Huh?
How's the tractor coming?
Wow, that voice got low.
Um,
Is he growing a beard?
He is.
Working on it. Yeah.
we'll have it done in 9 days.
9 days?
The beard or the tractor?
Evan.
Might be a better chance of the beard.
Yeah, maybe.
We've
Wait,
heard
it's
stories,
got-
Greg.
Yeah.
Not much has been done, I guess.
No. Well, maybe you want to X out of this deal. Maybe I'll just call you.
Sounds like a plan, Stan. Bye, guys.
All right. Later.
Hey.